What if I told you that the reason your company's big new project is failing has nothing to do with your team or your budget or even your strategy, but has everything to do with the fundamental laws of the universe? Today, we are going to connect the world of corporate change with the basic principles of physics. First, let's start with the number that pretty much everyone in the business world knows and frankly dreads: 70%. That is the crazy, stubbornly consistent failure rate for major corporate transformations. Year after year, despite billions spent on consultants and fancy new methods, this number, it just doesn't move. So you have to ask a really basic question. Why? With all the brain power and money we throw at this, how is it possible that we're missing something so fundamental about how change actually works? Well, the answer is yes, we are. And that answer comes from a place you would never, ever expect. To find it, we need to follow the incredible journey of a physicist. And I'll tell you, this is not your typical business guru story. This is a story that begins with molecules and ends with multi-million euro corporate turnarounds. The mind behind all this is Dr. Ashraf Bakhtor, and he did not start out in business school. Nope. His journey began in a physics lab at Cambridge, studying how oxygen molecules literally resonate and jump between energy states. Not exactly the typical background for a transformation consultant, right? But here's where it gets interesting. As he moved from that lab into the corporate world, leading these massive, complex projects, he started seeing the exact same patterns. The way a team would either click or just fall apart, it looked just like how molecules achieve resonance. The way a project would suddenly collapse, it was like a physical phase transition. He realized he wasn't learning a new set of rules. He was just seeing universal laws play out in a totally new environment. And he started seeing these patterns everywhere, even in places like sports. He figured out that great football managers pretty much all fit into these distinct physical archetypes. You've got the creator, the optimizer, and the innovator. You just can't ask an innovator to prevent relegation, just like you can't ask a stabilizer to completely reinvent the game. The physics has to match the situation. Then came another one of those aha moments, this time at a cybersecurity boot camp. He realized that the universal architecture for managing risk, which is prevent, detect, and correct, was the exact same framework he'd used years before to manage safety at a biogas plant. It wasn't an industry thing, it was a universal principle. So all these dots started to connect, and they led him to one single, incredibly powerful thesis. We've been looking at the problem of change completely wrong. And here is the absolute core of the idea. When a big transformation fails, it's not a failure of people, and it's not a failure of strategy. It's a failure of physics. The plan, without anyone even realizing it, violated a fundamental law of nature. It's kind of like trying to build a bridge that ignores gravity. It's just doomed from the very start. Let's look at the first and, honestly, the most intuitive law, the conservation of change capacity. In physics, you can't get more energy out of a closed system than what's available. It's a hard limit. Well, it's the exact same for organizations. Your team only has so much mental, emotional, and physical bandwidth. If you demand more change than they have the capacity to absorb, you don't magically get more results. The system just breaks. And this isn't just theory. It plays out on a massive scale. Think about the Greek debt crisis. International bodies demanded these huge, sweeping reforms across dozens of areas all at once. The required change capacity was something like 150 units, and the actual available capacity of the Greek system at that moment, maybe 20 or 30 units? That's a 5 to 7-fold violation of this law. The result wasn't just failure, it was a complete catastrophe. Now, the cool thing is, these laws don't just tell us what we're doing wrong. They can actually be combined into this simple, really elegant formula that describes how all living systems, from a single person to a whole economy, actually grow and thrive. Here it is. Growth equals balance times harmony, all raised to the power of time. Now, it looks simple, I know, but it is incredibly profound. Let's break down what it really means. And as you can see, this isn't just some formula for corporations. It's a universal architecture for growth. It applies at every single level of life. Whether we're talking about an individual trying to grow, a team building a product, or even a whole nation trying to reform itself. So what are these two core forces? Well, balance isn't about standing still. It's about dynamic, constant, incremental movement in the right direction. Think something like agile execution. And harmony, well, that isn't about everyone agreeing all the time. It's about resonance and coherence. It's the trust, the culture, the shared purpose that lets everyone's individual efforts add up and amplify each other. instead of just canceling each other out. And here's the kicker. If either of those forces is zero, your growth is zero. Period. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but does it actually work in the real world? Let's take a look at a case where these principles were put into practice on purpose, and the results, well, they were pretty incredible. So here's the situation. There's this big financial services firm, and they are spending an absolute fortune on external consultants to run all their projects. They wanted to build that capability inside the company, but every time they tried before, it had failed. So this time, they used a physics-compliant approach. And look at this. A one-time investment of less than 88,000 euros created over €1 million in savings every single year. That's not just a good ROI, that's the power of compounding growth and resonance when you get it right. So why did this work when all the other attempts failed? It's because it followed the laws of physics perfectly. First, they respected capacity by focusing on just one thing. They provided the activation energy with real, sustained leadership. They created resonance by building the program with their employees, not forcing it on them. And they aimed for that critical mass, a percolation threshold. That's the point where the change becomes self-sustaining and just spreads on its own. You see, they stopped fighting physics and started working with it. And all of this brings us to what might be the most radical idea of all. If transformation is really governed by physics, then maybe, just maybe, our entire definition of success is wrong. The theory lays out 3 levels of success. Level 3, flawless execution with no problems, that's partly luck. Level 2, hitting your targets and KPIs. That's probable, but it's still affected by outside stuff you can't control. But level 1, actually building the capability, the skills, and the trust within your team, that is 100% within your control. And it's the only level that truly matters, because that's the engine for every single future outcome. And this is the line to remember. If you hit your quarterly target, but you burn out your team, you destroy trust, and you lose critical knowledge, that is not success. It is failure that just happens to look like a win. You've basically traded your long-term future for a short-term gain. So I'll just leave you with this question to think about. When you look at your own work, your team, your organization, are you truly building that sustainable capability that lets you have compounded growth over time? Or are you just chasing the next outcome, unknowingly violating the laws of physics along the way? The answer to that? It might just change everything.